The Edmonton Oilers might have fallen 1-0 to the Vegas Golden Knights, but there's an awful lot of good to take away in a loss.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers. I'm your host, Nick Zararis. I want to thank everyone who's making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where you can enjoy the NFL season with a big return. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So today's episode, we're going to talk obviously about the game against the Golden Knights, and this is going to be out of character for me. I am not a very big proponent of the moral victory or taking positives away from losses, because as the wise philosopher John Tortorella once said, you show me a good loser, you're still showing me a loser, because ultimately this is sports and your goal is to win. But for a team like the Oilers, that is very much still in the weeds of figuring out how this season is going to go, there are productive losses. There are useful losses, and we're going to get into it. Our first segment, we're going to diagnose the game itself. We're going to talk about the flow of the game, what it resembled, what it kind of felt like. It wasn't just you imagining that this did kind of feel like a playoff game to some degree. Our second segment, we'll talk about Troy Stetcher's injury. We'll talk about how the Oilers defense has begun to stabilize. He did return to the bench at the end of the game, didn't get in there towards the end of the game, but he did come back to the bench. And then our final segment, we're going to talk about whether the Oilers are still within the realm of possibility of delivering their proof of concept. And we're going to do it through the lens of the playoff teams they've played so far. And specifically, we'll talk about it in relation to this game they played as of, that ended all of 10 minutes ago. So at the outset, whenever you're playing a quality opponent, and make no mistake about it, for all of Vegas's lineup warts, for all of their questionable lineup parts, for lack of a better word, this is still a very, very dangerous hockey team. And they have done an amicable job of filling out their bottom half of the lineup with guys, Pavel Dorofeyev, Brett Howden. They've managed to find ways to fill out their roster with functional NHL players to complement their high-end pieces. A team that features Jack Eichel, a Wild Bill Karlsson. Yes, I still call him Wild Bill. You've got Pietrangelo, you've got Shea Theodore, you've got Noah Hannafin, you've got two decent NHL caliber goaltenders in net as well. And the Oilers are dealing with depth issues right now. You're still missing two top six wingers in Hyman and Arvidsson. You would have loved to have seen Hyman out there at the end of the game working the net front. Instead, they had to go with Perry. And then after the puck went out of play, they went to Henrique for the last minute and a half to work the net front. But Zach Hyman is sorely missed, both at even strength on the power play, those end of game empty net situations. But this game at large, this is a bit of a deep cut as far as a reference. So if you're not a soccer person, this analogy might go over your head a little bit, but I'm going to do my best to articulate this in a way that makes sense. This was a case of two teams very reluctant to push forward. The puck went up and down the ice a lot. There wasn't a whole lot of chance creation, especially in that first period. This was very reminiscent of an early game in a playoff series where two teams are kind of feeling each other out. Nobody wants to make the first mistake, so maybe we're being a little cautious, we're being a little more slow, a little more deliberate in our decision making. And then as the game went along, both teams started to get a feel for when they would have opportunities to counterattack, to make runs, if you will, in the soccer parlance, to make a push towards the net. And the Oilers, as the game went along, started to find ways to leak through the Vegas defense, to make that rush, whether it's McDavid skating all the way through, whether it's jam plays, whatever. As the game went along, the Oilers started to find ways to be able to push to the net front. And even though they lost, I don't feel it's out of school to say they played well enough that they could have at least gotten to overtime in this game. You know, when you make a goalie make the quality of saves that they did tonight, when you find a way to, at the very least, put heat on the goalie, you find a way to make that other team really sweat it out. And again, this is a moral victory conversation, and it's not the most satisfying thing in the world to lose a 1-0 game. Neither team took a penalty in the entire game. To get shut out by Aiden Hill, you never feel great about getting shut out, but you outshot your opponent 28-16. The one goal you conceded was a funky play because at full speed, I thought the puck might have gone underneath Evan Bouchard because the attacking Vegas player, and I want to be sure, it was Barbashev, who I didn't mention before as far as being in that star power group for Vegas. He leads Vegas in goals with 13, which is crazy to me, but he was trying to get the puck to the middle or to shoot. Even at full speed, I wasn't entirely sure whether it was a pass or a shot, but Bouchard did a really nice job of getting in the lane and preventing it. And the puck, unfortunately for Bouchard, it caromed directly back onto Barbashev's stick. And because Stuart Skinner, and if you're watching on YouTube, you saw me almost start to say Jeff Skinner, but we've been really good about that here on Locked On Oilers. I've only said Jeff when I meant Stu, and said Stu when I meant Jeff like 3 times all season somehow. So we're doing a good job there. But Skinner was moving already to play the pass. And because that puck caromed directly back to Barbashev, the net was more or less open. And Skinner gives that goal up. And look, the Oilers got caught up the ice a little bit in the offensive zone. And I've been very hard on Evan Bouchard as far as his decision-making in the offensive zone, as far as pinching, as far as forcing pucks up the wall, as far as shooting pucks into defending players' shin pads. But I, in a game like this against a quality opponent, one mistake can be fatal. And unfortunately for the Oilers, that was the case here. I thought the Oilers did a really good job in this game maximizing what they could do. You know, they are missing 2 top 6 forwards in Arvidsson and Hyman. You know, you're still playing Stetcher and Emberson, who haven't been full-time regular NHLers in a while, or in Emberson's case, really ever. And the defense is starting to solidify. And I do think finally we are getting close to the point where we could say the Oilers are escaping that looming black cloud that's been hanging over their head for the last 2 months now, going into the first week of December. It has been really tough sledding for the Oilers at various points this season, but I think the fact that I'm sitting here after that game and I feel pretty satisfied about the effort, the quality of play, I think that's truly a sign of progress. You know, you're not going to win all 82 games. You are going to have stinkers where you get ran off the ice. But when you are a good quality hockey team and you are playing a good opponent and you are able to play a game well enough that if you get a bounce, you at least get to overtime, if not win the game outright, shorthanded, missing key players, you can say we are starting to make progress. And that's really all I've been asking for the past few weeks is, I know this isn't going to come together nearly as fast as it did last year where they were able to rattle off all those wins in a row, but show me signs of progress. Let's tighten up our defense. Let's do more to create offense. And look, there's definitely more to be done offensively here, but this game is undoubtedly a step in the right direction. We are going to take our first break of today's edition of Locked On Oilers. We are going to talk defense. We're going to talk about the Troy Stetcher injury, a whole lot more coming up next on this edition of Locked On Oilers. So be sure to stick around. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. If you headed on over to the website or you whipped out the app, you would see a really nice showdown on Thursday Night Football in the NFC North between the Packers and the best team in the entire NFL, the Detroit Lions, where the Lions are 3.5-point favorites. My personal favorite game of the weekend, though, Justin Herbert and the Chargers heading to Kansas City to Arrowhead to take on Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, where the Chiefs are 3.5-point favorites. You can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out here on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers as we are unpacking the loss to the Vegas Golden Knights, a 1-0 loss, and what was a very tight affair. And building off of that idea we finished up last segment, the idea of making progress where even your losses are productive, that's a sign of a quality team. And it's something I've been asking for from the Oilers for a few weeks now is we need to start making incremental progress towards where we want to be. You don't win the Stanley Cup in October, November, December, but you can certainly lose it. And that's not a comment about missing the playoffs. This Oilers team, barring disaster, and look, the first 2 months were as close to a disaster as you can get for a team this talented. And I know the record wasn't abysmal. They were in a playoff spot coming into tonight. Even after the loss, they're still in a playoff spot. But barring disaster, this is a playoff team. But part of that journey, part of putting yourself in a position to rise to being a Stanley Cup contender and ultimately a Stanley Cup champion is making progress. It is continuing to build. You know, we talk all the time here on Locked On Oilers, the idea of the low, the middle ground, the high ground. We never want to be too confident where we teeter over into overconfidence. We never want to be too low where we start to spiral. Our goal is to find a healthy middle ground. And then as the season goes along, we keep incrementally building so that our average game is better. You know, our goal is that by the end of March, early April, we are getting close to our optimum hockey. And then once we are playing as close as we can to our optimum style, we are going to see how our game shakes out. And look, there's an incredible amount of variance in the sport of hockey that makes it really difficult to go into a series, even as a big favorite, and feel particularly confident. The game itself lends itself to funkiness, and that funkiness was a defining characteristic of the first few weeks of months even of the Oilers season, where pucks ricocheting off of guys, pucks dying on the glass, going up the wall towards the neutral zone, guys sticks breaking, pucks being flubbed off of sticks in prime scoring positions. You know, those types of mistakes, when you are struggling, it feels like they happen every game. You know, there was a few weeks ago, Darnell Nurse had been on the ice for more than half of the goals against for the Oilers this season in all situations when you add up even strength and power play, even though he plays less minutes than Ekholm and Bouchard. But my point at large here is I am still worried about getting this offense where it needs to be. We'll see how worried we'll be in a few weeks. I think once Arvidsson and Hyman come back, and the rough estimate last week was middle of the week. It's Wednesday. In theory, they should both be available, or I should say Hyman should be available sooner. Arvidsson was definitely on a little more of a prolonged timeline than Hyman, but sitting here right now, if you get the defensive effort you got tonight from everybody, and defense is a team effort. You know, we do have defensemen. It's in the title of the position, but forwards are an important part of defense in today's NHL because defensemen on most teams are active offensively. You cannot, as a forward, even if you're a Draisaitl and McDavid, be cheating for offense, because then you're hanging your guys out to dry. You are leaving your defensemen where they're going to have numbers mismatches. And look, you never, and I'm going to quote Chris Rock, the legend, one of the great stand-up comedians of all time. He has a bit where he talks about people wanting credit for things they're supposed to do, that you're supposed to do certain things. The example he uses is, well, I take care of my kids, and Chris Rock says, well, you're supposed to take care of your kids. What do you want credit for that for? In this case, Connor McDavid, you made a really good defensive play there at the end of the game with the empty net to keep the game alive. And I know Connor McDavid knows that, and we shouldn't be giving guys credit for doing the bare minimum. That's the expectation, that you're out there busting your butt trying to make that play happen. But to see that level of commitment to defensive effort tonight from McDavid, that was a testament to the quality of game this was. It's a really telling characteristic of the early seasons in sports, how different they are. That in football, the first month of the season is very slow. It is very clunky. It is very low scoring because offenses are working out their timing. Defenses typically start ahead. In hockey, when guys are working out their timing, it is defensive breakdowns. It is easier to score. The goaltending is a lot more poor. And as the season goes along, as goalies ramp up, as they get into rhythms, it becomes more challenging to score. And tonight was a good testament to that. The fact that it was a 1-0 game and the two teams combined for less than 40-something shots on goal, if my back of the envelope math it correctly. Yeah, that 38? Yes, 38. Yeah, 38 shots on goal, less than 40 shots on goal between the two teams. And the Oilers played well enough in this game that I'm sitting here and I've spent the better part of the first half of this episode feeling good about it. I've come on here after games, after losses, and felt like I got punched in the stomach, got kicked in the chest. And tonight, I feel okay. If that was game 3 of the second round or the conference final, I would sit here and be like, okay, they can beat this team. And look, it's only one game. It's early on, but this simple matter of fact, if you can hang around with teams like Vegas, missing guys like you are, and look, I know Vegas is missing Mark Stone. He practiced today with a full contact jersey for the first time. He still hasn't taken any contact, and he's still probably a few weeks away from returning, but no Arvidsson, no Hyman. You lose Stetcher midway through this game. You get a good Skinner performance. And look, I know the stinker goal he lets up stinks. When you have a game like this, it is incumbent upon your guys to pick up your goalie. It is not unreasonable, even against a good team, to ask your team to score at least one goal. That's all I'm saying. I am not saying Skinner is absolved of blame. He has definitely not been great so far this season. As much of a proponent of him as I am, as much as I think he has the ability to be a bell cow starting goalie, he hasn't been great this year, and it bleeds over from the other issues with the team. But you lose Stetcher, he comes back to the bench, you hope he's okay. Anytime you're dealing with a puck to the head, it's scary. Anytime you are talking about a player leaving the ice bleeding from his ear because he ate a puck off the ear, it's scary. And the fact he was able to come back to the bench tells me he was able to clear the concussion protocol, which is encouraging. His equilibrium and balance were okay because he was able to come back into the game. But this is where the Oilers need to be. And look, some of the fact that they were able to play such good defense tonight was tied to the fact that Vegas was very reticent to push, that they were very picky and choosy, like we said, the soccer analogy, choosing when to make runs towards the net, being very tentative, settling for low quality chances. And then once they got the lead, it really forced the Oilers to dig in. And I thought the Oilers did a reasonable enough job in this game of digging in, that sitting here, it is reasonably satisfied to sit here and say, okay, we can hang with those guys. We have work to do. We know they have work to do. The next time we see them, they're going to be better. We're going to see them 2 more times this year as a division opponent, but there's work to be done. And your goal, as we've said all year, keep building incremental progress so your average quality of game is at a really high level by the time we get to the deadline. And then you can reinforce your lineup, deepen your lineup, because you'll push guys further down. You'll push guys entirely out of your lineup. That's your goal. We're going to take one more quick break. We're going to talk about why the Oilers still have work to do. And we're going to talk about it through the lens of the playoff teams they've played so far. Coming up next on this edition of Locked On Oilers. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. With PrizePicks, you can win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. Think Connor McDavid's going to have more than half a goal next time out. Stuart Skinner, more than 24 and a half saves. Evan Bouchard, more than 3.5 shots on goal. All of that and a whole lot more over on PrizePicks. So download the PrizePicks app or head on over to their website and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time now, download the PrizePicks app or visit their website and use code LOCKEDONNHL so they know we sent you to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out here on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers, to all the everydayers. If you're listening at the start of your day, on the way to work, on the way to school, on the way to the gym, thank you. Glad you're part of this journey. And that's what this is, man. I talk about this all the time. It is a 9.5 month, 10-month odyssey from the first guy showing up back in Edmonton to, God willing, a parade in Edmonton. It is an arduous, long journey, and we are all in this together, and we are all trying to go in the same direction, and that is building incrementally. And it means that when we play playoff teams, when we play Vegas, we play Vancouver, we play Winnipeg, we play Minnesota, that means we raise our game. And look, I have made no bones about my skepticism about some of these performances. You know, they got stomped by the Jets. They got stomped by the Wild. Those are really discouraging losses. Granted, those are two really good teams. The Wild have the best record in the entire NHL right now. When the Oilers had played the Jets a few weeks ago, the Jets had the best record in the NHL. But when you go and look, and the Oilers have played 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games against playoff teams so far this season, they've pulled 1 win against the Flames, who are in a playoff spot, 1 win against the Rangers, who are in a playoff spot, and 1 win against Vancouver. Those are the teams they have beat who are currently in playoff spots as of this recording. And look, I want to make full disclosure here. I am not positive whether or not the NHL.com standings have updated based on tonight's games, because Calgary played tonight, Edmonton played tonight, so I'm not positive. If that fact check is incorrect, I will make sure I post a correction and address it on tomorrow's episode. But regardless, you have got a lot of runway in front of you. You have a ton of division games ahead of you. You have yet to play the Sharks. You have yet to play the Ducks. You play both of those teams 4 times as division opponents. That needs to be 5-3 at the absolute worst. You have yet to play some real stinkers. You still have the chance to play Seattle a few times. You have to play St. Louis a few times. You go over into the Eastern Conference and you get another game against the Flyers. You get another game against the Islanders. The Rangers might be stinkers. You get to play Ottawa. You get to play Buffalo. I know Buffalo is hanging around the playoffs, but you get to play Detroit. But work with me here. The Oilers have so much runway in front of them. And that's why I keep hammering this idea of building and building and building. Because tonight, in a loss to a good team, was the first time I genuinely felt like, okay, the Oilers are playing quality hockey against a good opponent, and they are playing in a way that is replicable, that it wouldn't be that hard for them to be able to do this again. They might get some more bounces when they have Arvidsson and Hyman in spots as opposed to Kapanen and Connor Brown. I think pushing guys lower in the lineup will only help them out. I think playing guys less in certain contexts is a good thing. I know we always talk about that ice time is the most important variable in determining a player's counting stats, but I do think for certain players, I think you're going to get more out of a Corey Perry, a Connor Brown, a Matthias Janmark, using them in more of a niche specialist role where they're only being asked to do certain things to maximize their particular skill sets. And look, I don't have the answers. I can't tell you how the rest of this season is going to go sitting here on December 4th, but I feel reasonably confident in the high-end talent on this team being enough to keep them hanging around. Tonight, in conjunction with that, in conjunction with one, if not two deadline moves, then we build it out a little bit further. What is underperforming relative to expectation? Well, Arvidsson, Hyman, Jeff Skinner, Adam Henrique. Okay. And you can throw Nugent there as well. If 6 of your 12 forwards are underperforming, and it's more so based on, mistakes, sloppiness, as opposed to like age-related decline, okay. I see the opportunity for bounce back here. I haven't even mentioned the goaltending yet, which make all the jokes you want, make fun of him all you want. Skinner's not an 885 goalie. He's had pretty reasonable numbers the later into seasons you've gotten. We did an episode a few weeks ago breaking that down, the fact that he's typically at his best December, April. And look, I know there's months in between them, but the fact that he gets into a rhythm, and that's typically in conjunction with when the team starts to play better. And when the team is rolling, Stuart Skinner becomes less of a pronounced factor in their wins and losses. I say it all the time. I said it 1,000 times last year during the playoff run. Stuart Skinner is just a guy on your team. You're going to win a lot of games. If he needs to be the guy, then you're going to start running into trouble because that's not who he is, And look, I know I was about to say Shesterkin. I know Shesterkin's had a couple stinkers in a row, but he's not Hellebuck. He's not Ottinger. He's not Bob, Vasilevsky, Shesterkin, Sorokin, whoever you want to use. I do think Stuart Skinner is an above average NHL goalie, above average in like the 12th to 13th range, not like top 10 or anything. But I think that the Oilers are starting to settle down. I think the defense is putting their offense a little more at ease. And I think with the offense being more at ease, you will start to see better play. We talked about it the other day, posted a YouTube short, Instagram reel about it. When you get Skinner and Arvidsson and Nuge and Hyman starting to feel better about their games, it's going to come a whole lot easier to them, and that puck's going to start going in the net. But that'll do it for this edition of Locked On Oilers. Before we get out of here, if you could be so kind, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, perchance, please subscribe. Not subscribe. Leave the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit the alarm bell so you get a notification whenever new content goes live. I will talk to you guys tomorrow ahead of the Oilers' next game. I'll see you guys then. Oh, real quick. Thank you for making Locked On Oilers your first listen of the day. Now go check out the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast, where you can get all the tips you need to dominate your league mates with all of the tips from Steal and Flip. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts. I'll see you guys tomorrow.